Welcome to Off Leash and Unfiltered. Trigger warning, I'm Katie Pepe, delivering the truth in dog training. Hey everybody, this is your host, Katie Pepe. Before we jump in, I just wanted to take a quick second and remind you to hit the subscribe button because that helps us so much. We appreciate every subscribe and follow, and we have so much valuable information we want to share with you, so we don't want you to miss an episode. Without further ado, let's jump in. So we're here with the wonderful Joyce again today, and I thought we might start by letting you fill us in a little bit because we didn't really get into any of this last time, but I'm kind of wondering what things look like for you and your own dogs. So like what has your journey looked like with your dog? Yeah.
Beginning?
Let's go back to the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
Or whatever you think is relevant. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So, obviously, why did I do training, right? I had 2 labs and I really struggled with them walking. They became progressively reactive. One dog was more reactive than the other, and then it kind of fed the second dog where they were reactive to first it was like squirrels. They would like yank my arm off, then it started to become dogs walking towards us and they would just bark. They weren't like aggressive, like trying to be mean to the other dog. They just wanted to get over there. I don't know why, but and then it became anything, even people without their dogs, just walking.
Right.
So it became very embarrassing and really hard. I was hiding behind bushes and stuff like that. So that was probably the biggest thing for me because I really wanted to walk with them.
Yeah.
And I wanted them out and about for their quality of life. And then the second thing was they barked out the window, reactive to really anything from a doorbell ringing to the oil guy or UPS, people riding their bikes. They would just bark. And 2 of them, it was a lot. So, and I just didn't want to deal with that. Those were kind of the 2 things that really made me think I need to do something different. I don't know what I'm doing. So, and then just normal obedience, and I actually off leash recall was big. I wanted to go down the beach with them. And I really
live near the beach.
Yeah. And they love the water. So.
And people don't think of labs as being super reactive dogs.
Right. Everyone thinks, oh my God, your dog's so cute. Let me come up and pet it. And it was like I was walking 2 like Dobermans, down the street or pit bulls with like spiked collars and they were like big roughies, and it was like, no, I had these adorable labs.
Well, because even though they are pretty friendly and social, they looked kind of ferocious sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, really. So they would, Zoe, my chocolate lab, would just screech and people would look at me like, what is wrong? They wouldn't say anything, but they were like, wow.
Cross the street and avoid that one.
They would even bark at a dog in the house barking. So a dog in the house is reacting to me, and my dog's coming by, and then my dogs would start wailing.
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh my God, it's a Sunday morning at 7 a.m. and I can't even walk up the street because I'm waking up the whole neighborhood.
Yep. And we hear that all the time. Like people, I got to walk my dog at 10 o'clock at night or 5 in the morning before there's anybody around.
And, I had the 2 of them and I had them in harnesses and they're not that big, but, I had like 120 pounds pulling me down the street.
Why don't you just get some roller skates?
Yeah. So it was a lot. And I was like, oh man.
Yeah. But then eventually you found like a fantastic trainer.
I did. Oh my God, it was you. It was so great that I ended up coming to work here.
That's right.
So I did the private lessons. I found that really good because for me, if I would have done the board and train, but at the time financially, I just couldn't do it with the 2 dogs at the same time. So I was by myself. My daughter just went to college. So I was like, oh, I could do this. I have a lot of time.
Well, and back then, I don't do this anymore, like but back then, if people had 2 dogs and wanted to train them both, we just did them at the same time.
Right.
We worked with each dog individually, but we trained both dogs.
Right. Yeah, so I had a little bit longer than an hour session. Maybe it was like an hour and a half because we had to do both dogs.
Right.
And
so you had a lot piled on your plate.
Then I would go home and I would have to practice with each of them separately, and that was hard because one's in a crate and one's out doing the stuff and the other one's looking at me like, why am I in this crate? Why am I out here? So yeah, I think I struggled with like the remotes because I had one remote for the two dogs.
Yes.
So I have both dogs on the one remote, and which is good in one hand, but bad in the other because sometimes I zap the wrong dog.
Yeah, so if you have two dogs, get two remotes. Like you can always put them both on the same remote if you want to. But sometimes it's helpful to just have them each have their own remotes, less confusing. And especially if you do have a second person too, you can each have
It was a
one.
little hard with the two remotes, like walking and stuff, so I like when I walk, I have the one remote, so I kind of mastered that.
Yeah.
But
You can go back and forth though if you have a second remote.
true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I don't even do it that way anymore because it is so overwhelming. Like it's a lot.
But I loved it. I thought it was great. I had never heard of the e-collar before, the prong collar. So the whole idea of the punishment for the dog took me a while to wrap my head around, because I'm a big softie. I'm more like soothing and it's okay. And
typical human.
Yeah. So to do the high corrections for the unwanted behaviors.
And now you work here. Who knew?
Yeah. And I think, for me, that was probably where I got hung up the most. And I was that person that you'd say, how's that going? And I'd be like, I'm working on it. You're like, why are your dogs still barking out the window? I'm like, well, I'm working on it. Because I thought I would go high enough and I wouldn't. And it wasn't really, I probably came to work here a couple years after that training, give or take, maybe 2.5.
Yeah.
And I would say my dogs were really good. But it was when I came here and started working, and then I was doing all of that stuff day in, day out. I would see like the things that I was doing wrong. I would have had my dogs in the nag zone. And so I went home and kind of tweaked that. So for me personally, it was kind of hard to get to those high corrections, but I saw the value in it, and I would see with my own eyes that the behavior would go away with other dogs. So I was like, what's your deal? Just do it.
Right?
Yeah, because it works. Yeah.
Yeah. And how old were your dogs when you started training?
Oh, geez. 4 years ago. So 8, 7 and 5.
Yeah. Which
So
is awesome because people think once their dog is over like a year old, 2 years old, like there's no point in doing training now. It's too late.
Yeah. And with the first dog, Bella, we taught her to sit. We taught her to, I would say maybe sit down a little bit, but so she knew some commands. But when we got the second dog, it was hard to teach try to teach the second dog. It was hard to teach with 2. I didn't know how to do it. And then, that reactivity just kind of took over my life, or took over our life, I should say, at the time. And so I couldn't take it anymore. And so I wanted to change that.
And that's
so I was like, and I remember even asking you that. I was like, in our consultation, I was like, they're 5 and 7. I'm like, am I,
right.
Behind the 8 ball here? Will they ever really be able to learn?
Yeah. I hear that all the time, right? We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Totally lost my train of thought here, but
about how old they are.
What was it? Damn, I can't remember.
You're too old.
I know. Well, I've been doing this a lot lately, and it's starting to concern me. I'm like, maybe I should get this checked. I'm that person that's in the room going, why did I come in this room? Why did I sit down in this chair? What am I doing? What is this microphone? Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, so they were 5 and 7, and that really didn't impact them being able to learn. I think I agree with some of the things you've said about older dogs, in the sense that if they haven't had a lot of structure, or if they haven't had a lot of ability,
they haven't had to learn anything before,
then it takes them a little longer.
Yeah, of course.
Or they get it's not so much that it takes them longer, it's just that they're like, what do you mean there's rules now? Like,
well, that's part of it.
Like,
but actually,
I do what I want to do.
Just learning too is a skill, right? So if you've never really had to learn to like do something you wouldn't naturally normally do, like that in and of itself is a skill. Like having to learn what a word means, or having to learn what place means. Like if you've never had to learn anything, then your body literally has to learn how to learn.
Yep.
Yeah. And then there's that piece too, where they're totally taken aback by the fact that there's rules and boundaries now. Yeah. That's definitely part of it.
I mean, they were really great dogs, or they still are great dogs. And they just had those few things that made it really hard for them to be around other people. So we kind of fixed that.
Yeah. And I mean, what we see is so many people in that same boat, and sometimes much, much worse, right? You had reactive dogs and they were hard to walk and take places, but sometimes we see even worse stuff where people can't leave the dog home alone, or things of that nature. And or the dog, bites them in normal
Yep.
everyday scenarios, guards things, whatever the case may be. And it just kind of becomes normal, right?
Yep.
And you start to not even realize like how not normal it is,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Or like how much
Exactly.
better things could be.
Yep. And I guess, when talking about things that I struggled with, the other thing that I probably struggled with the most was, again, it has to do around the high correction aspect, is, I listened to you talk about the high pairing of the correction with the recall command.
Yeah.
And I thought that was in my brain. I was like, that's outrageous. I don't know if I could ever do that. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. So I didn't do it right away.
I think a lot of people do that.
I was like, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. And so, I went down to the beach and I did everything that you said to do. I practiced on the long line. I brought each one separately. I did it when no one was around. And then I built it up to the point that I saw each of them coming back to me, and I felt good about it. But it wasn't super challenging because there wasn't a random dog running to them or whatnot. And so I did get myself into a situation a couple times where I was that person where my dog's off leash, running up to another person with their dog, and I'm the one saying, "Oh my God, she usually listens to me. I'm so sorry," and it was horrible. Luckily, nothing
She's
happened.
friendly.
Yeah, but and then I did the high pairing from the high correction, and it stopped that. So now I go down and I don't ever really worry about that.
Yeah, great. And so, I mean, what I'm hearing is what I think is true for a lot of people is like, until you feel like you've exhausted everything else, you don't actually take that leap of faith that
Right.
like that high correction is the right thing to do. And we're talking about it in the context of recall, but obviously even unwanted behaviors like really, really common, things like jumping or like reactivity, especially the loading, things like that. We tell
Jumping
people
at the door, it's so easy to fix.
counter surfing, getting into the trash, all that stuff. We tell people, high correction, just eliminate that behavior so you don't have to struggle with it for the next, 6 months, 12 months, the rest of your dog's life, whatever it is.
Yes.
But people won't do that right away. They'll go home and they'll try even just saying no, right? Or a really low tap on their e-collar.
Yeah.
They just grab it and tap and it's on a 5, right? And sometimes it works in the moment, but then the dog's gonna do it again. And so then they become those folks, right? We see them at the next lesson, and it's, well, we're working on it. But until they see that like it's not going anywhere, they don't find the courage to actually follow the instruction, which is to just pair that high correction. It's really, really common. So that's definitely something people struggle with for sure. Another piece that I think is really unnatural for folks is the structure that we talk about. I think number one, it's hard to understand what we mean by that. But it's also just really unnatural, right? Nobody lives with their dogs that way, typically. People just let their dogs typically roam around, just be part of the family, part of the household. But obviously the problem with that is some dogs have unwanted behaviors, or they're just accustomed to kind of ruling the roost. And so it's hard to change that without that structure piece.
Yeah, I think people miss the point. Not
100%.
intentionally, but I think they're hearing it, and because it is so unnatural, they're probably in the back of their mind thinking, well, my dog doesn't need that. My dog's fine. It's not a problem. But they're missing the point that it's that period of time where it's a new relationship where the dog's learning, they're listening to you always, right? That they're not just making decisions.
Right.
And that's the part that's lost, because it's like, well, I'm going to let my dog run around the house. They're not going to do anything bad. Well, it's not really about that.
Exactly.
It's about, what they just went over and they got up on the couch, and maybe you don't care that they're on the couch, but for a short period of time, it's not really about whether they're on it or not. It's that they got on it because you told them they could versus they got on it just because they wanted to.
It's you like changing your roles. It's changing the dynamic.
Right.
That's what it's about.
Right.
Right. And if your dog is just fully autonomous, then you lose all of that ground.
Right.
You don't get the benefit of any of that.
Right. Because it's like that's building the muscle for them where they're thinking before they act. It's almost like they're looking at you like, is this okay?
Yes. They're checking in.
Right. Versus they're just
irrelevant
just
now.
react.
Yeah.
To the situation at hand. And sometimes it's a good reaction and sometimes it's maybe not.
Yeah.
But
I think another piece to that too is people getting actually used to giving their dog instruction and rules and boundaries as opposed to just letting the dog be autonomous. Like it's practice for the human as much as it is for the dog.
Yeah. And that I would say that that's something too over time you can get pretty lax about because the dog is great all the time, so you're not thinking, oh, we're going to do some down drills today, or
right.
oh, we're going to, I'm going to put you on place and make you stay there while we watch this movie. It's like, why? They're sleeping over there in the corner, but it's not so much about the fact that they're over there being good. It's just about, well, if you don't have them practice that, then they lose. It's like anything.
Exactly.
You lose your proficiency.
Yeah. Well, and the relationship never evolves, which is what we're usually really trying to do.
Right.
Yeah. Corrections are definitely hard for people. Structure is definitely hard for people. But it's like these aren't things we ask people to do to be militant. And I think it's really, really hard to explain that. And that's kind of why I love having you here to help with that because you've been in their shoes.
Right.
Love the show? Well, I have great news. We are offering an inexpensive subscription to our new premium content. This is content that isn't available to the general public. We make it just for our subscribers. We're going to cover a variety of new topics in these episodes, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun. So you can jump right down into the show notes to get that website address, and then skip over there and sign up for this premium content. Just wanted to take a second to let you guys know about that. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on with the show. Right, you've done this before, and I actually haven't. Yeah. So I never had a trainer tell me to do these things. I just, I did my research and I found out myself and I DIY'd everything. And then I ended up going down the whole rabbit hole and going to the seminars and workshops of the people that I admired and, watching the videos and getting dogs and just working hands-on and getting the experience. But I never was the one. I mean, I went to trainers because I had a terrible dog.
Right.
But they didn't know what they were talking about. So.
Right. I think what you're saying is that you didn't have a different point of view about whether something should or shouldn't be done. Because,
I never got people.
Right.
I never got a trainer that recommended an e-collar. I never got a trainer that recommended structure. I never got a trainer that even understood why my dog was so terrible.
Yep.
Right? Because the trainer I got told me my dog was a blank slate. Which is silly, of course, because dogs are born with genes and personalities and they're all different. So you can have two dogs grow up in the same house and be completely different because they're not born a blank slate. But at any rate, neither here nor there. I never had somebody look at me and tell me, hey, you should use your kennel more. You should take away some of the decision making for your dog. You should maybe not let your dog on the furniture for a little while. You should, any of those things.
Yeah.
And you have. So it's really nice to have you here to tell people, hey, I totally understand. This is what I thought. This is what I did.
Yeah.
And now on the other side of it, you can share what that looks like now, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
For sure.
So many things.
Oh, leash management.
Yeah. That's a good call.
They use it more than they need to.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and in the beginning, it's actually...
they go to that versus their first reaction is to do something with the leash versus doing something with the e-collar.
Well, yeah. And I mean, even if you are using the leash, let's say you don't even have an e-collar, just restraining the dog versus telling them something with your leash, 100%.
Yeah.
If you have a nervous dog that wants to run away and you're just holding them in place with the leash while they're trying to run away. Nothing's happening there.
Right.
Nothing good.
They're actually
versus
getting worse.
right. Yes, because they're rehearsing trying to flee, right? So it's like instead of just giving them the information, whether it's through the leash or the e-collar.
Yeah.
But definitely when people are e-collar training, like just staying too heavily reliant on that leash. That's a big one. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, like if you talk about like the simple things, right? Doors, right? And you see people like when they come back here, even if maybe they're coming in for boarding, right? And they've already gone through the program months, like years ago, and they come back and sometimes it's perfection and other times there's the dog that's just coming in and they're not even in tune to it because the dog's not really pulling them. It's not a big deal to them. They're missing that small moment of, and you were kind of saying it to the woman yesterday in the lesson. It's like, it's less it is about them physically being forward, but it's more about the problem with them being mentally forward
yes.
because they're so in tune to be like, just what's that? What's that? I got to get that versus being calm.
Right. Exactly.
So you might not care that your dog just kind of went through the door ahead of you because it's really in the grand scheme of things, they didn't pull you over, but they were.
Right.
You weren't relevant to them in that moment.
And that's the point, right? It's not actually, we don't give a shit who actually goes through the door first, right?
Right, exactly.
It's more about like, are you relevant to your dog? Like, are they learning that they're not fully autonomous all the time?
Right. Or the car,
not?
It's like getting in and out of the car. It's like just because you opened the door and they fly in, they're in tuned with the car door more than they're in tuned with you.
Exactly. And that's a good way to put it. For sure. They see that physical environmental cue and it's like that's what determines their behavior. And it's so tough sometimes to articulate to people why that's important, but it's like you either teach your dog to respond to the things they see in the environment or to you, and you really can't have it both ways.
Right. And I think that's the thing, because it's like the more you're around it, you start to understand like the value of that, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, I think you're right. People are thinking, oh God, you don't have to be such a hard ass. It's like, I don't really care if I open the door and the dog goes in, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that you want the dog to be listening to you. So you don't get to pick and choose when he listens or
exactly.
when she listens
and then when the other dog comes along or the squirrel, then they want the dog to listen to them and never mind
it's
the
an
dog
all or
or
nothing.
squirrel.
And I think it's like that gets lost on people just because they're not doing it all the time. Like, right? You have like what, an hour or 2 hours to get all of those points across to people, and some of them hit and some of them don't.
Right, that's true too. Yeah.
So it's really about
yeah
how they can move about their day.
It makes things so much harder, though, if people miss those moments. And it's like we said yesterday, it's like those are the moments that actually comprise your day and actually impact your dog the most, right? We can talk about the moments that you struggle with, like when a bike comes along or your dog's afraid of cars or they chase squirrels. But those things don't happen in the grand scheme of things nearly as often as you open a door and go through it.
We should even think about doing some type of like I know we do a follow-up session with individual people.
Yeah.
But it might be valuable to have like a follow-up class or multiple ones where, maybe it's multiple families come back. And you have
that's a great idea.
And you know what? Now you've been through all of the obedience, you've been through all the unwanted behavior stuff, but now these are the small moment things that I bet none of you are doing.
See, now you started to go down that road, and I knew where you were going with it, but now my brain has turned it into my idea.
Well, you can have it.
So I have this great idea. No, I think that's amazing.
Right?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Because if you have to listen to 100% of what is shared with you at a go home session, it's a lot. So if you come out of there retaining 85% of it, that's considered a success, right?
Yeah.
So what gets lost is that 15% of all of that stuff about the doors, the kennel, the small moments.
We're so going to do this. I'm so
and I think people would find value in that.
Well, yeah, I can think of a lot of
it's like a fine-tuning.
Good points.
You might think you've mastered the dog training, but now have you fine-tuned all these little things?
Yes, yeah, because that's going to help. I think that's a great idea. And then if we had multiple people at once, we could make them a little bit longer.
Yeah, so then everyone
they would actually get a longer.
It's like I think the
That'd be great.
collaborative conversation would be more
It's
valuable.
more like
than
a
just,
group class.
yeah.
So cool.
Because, you might not be thinking of something and someone else says something and
It's a
then
great idea.
everyone's like, oh, yeah.
So I was thinking last night, when we did the go home lesson, because the dog obviously that was going home is a little bit tense and she's easily stressed. She doesn't really like doing the work, and she actually got really good at it and was very comfortable doing the work most of the time for us. And that was fine. But then her owner came back and obviously she got really excited and we worked her through that. And then we're doing the go home lesson. And you could see her kind of regress back to like being stressed, doing the work. And that's another thing I think people have a hard time with, is when they have a dog that just looks stressed, right? Quote unquote stressed. And maybe they are, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing.
Right.
Right. But you can have dogs like I had a customer with a dog. It was a coonhound of some kind, I think, who I would put her on place and literally she could be there for hours and she would still just be sitting up and panting. Like, unless I really followed through repeatedly, and like made her lay down, and she'd still be stressed, she'd still be panting. But I mean, she would be up, she would be stress panting. That can be really tough for people.
Right.
But sometimes that's just who the dog is. Right. So I think it's important for people to understand that, like, that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong or bad just because your dog is stressed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the shaking too.
Well,
like
right. And I think what is people need to realize is that will dissipate in time, right? Because if you work them through that discomfort,
usually
they will stop. Like, we've had many dogs in here like that start like that.
Yep.
And if it doesn't go away in the 2 or 3 weeks they're here, it goes away as their owners work with them and work with them over time.
And then they're better for it on the other side, right?
Right. Because we'll have dogs come in now, like even, can we say people's names? Or no?
I don't usually use people's names.
So, this was a client that had private lessons, and 2 of them, and I think maybe one was, they're either both for private lessons or one was, and they come in now almost every single group class, right?
Yeah.
And you would never look at those dogs and think, oh my God, they were like nervous Nellies, anxious, like shaking all the time.
You talk about Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Erica, we're using your name.
Sorry, I was trying so hard to like go around it, right? But I mean, because I experienced the second dog. I don't think.
Yeah, Milo.
Yeah, I think.
Well, the other one was private lessons.
Okay.
You were here.
Was I there for both of them?
Yeah, because Milo was first.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But they both, would be very rigid on the place caught, and just very uncomfortable during their training, right? And then they worked through it. But now you see them in the Saturday classes, and I mean, maybe there's a little of that, but I mean, just an average person just looking at the dogs, you wouldn't
100%.
Like, we used to sit
at all.
outside of Dollar Tree, and Milo would be
shaking like
quivering. Yeah. And he doesn't do that now.
No. Yep. And
so
Phoebe,
it goes away.
I was surprised when we met Phoebe because she was like even worse, but I wasn't expecting.
So the point being that, you can be very, as an owner, tuned into that and thinking, God, what's wrong? Is this training right for the dog? I don't know. They seem so uncomfortable. But then over time, you work them through it. Like if they don't like the vacuum cleaner, you do the vacuum cleaner around them every day.
It's just so hard.
It doesn't matter anymore. And then they don't care about the vacuum cleaner or anything, whatever it is.
Yeah. So you're actually building confidence.
Right. I mean,
which is so counterintuitive. I think it's so hard for people to see that and see their dog in that state and not feel like they're causing it, and that's bad.
Or even like some of the dogs with the nail trimming, where they're screaming and pulling away. So I loved your concept of taking and doing it. Usually you trim your dog's nails once every so many months, right? But you were building up that resistance or the resilience where, you're doing like a nail at a time. You do one nail, and then the next day or later on that day, when you're just kind of making them realize that I'm going to come at you like 12 times a day until you don't care anymore.
Right. And then it becomes not a thing.
Right. And then they're like, here,
which makes sense.
My paw.
Take my paw, cut my nails, please. Then before you know it, the dog's begging you to cut their nails. No, we don't usually get there.
No, but we get so much better.
That's a tall order.
Where maybe they don't have to be in a muzzle.
But yeah, where they could just totally tolerate it, right? They might never love it, but they're fine with it.
Or they can go to the vet and they don't have to be put
it's under. Just a thing that happens. Yeah, because we've had some dogs like that. That sucks. Like, who wants to put their dog under their nails?
It's a lot, because then, it's emotional for everyone.
Yeah. Just teach the dog to chew them off before you bring them to the bed. Thank God. Yeah, for sure. It's just that was one that stands out to me. It's that stress stuff because it's so common. But it's like that's episodic stress, and the end justifies the means, right? It's like we're actually teaching the dog how to not be stressed, and that is stressful in the moment, but that's healthy stress, right? Whereas if you don't do that, the dog stays stressed forever,
right?
And it's like, okay, that's not any nicer, right? That's not compassion, in my opinion. So, but yeah, really, really common one. And a lot of dogs, they're uncomfortable. Like you start doing the work with them and they're just like, what is this? I'm usually like queen of the castle. I do whatever I want. Like I go over here and I lay on the couch and I chew on my toy and I demand attention when I want it and I guard things when I want it, whatever the case may be. And then you're like, actually, we're going to do a few downs. We're going to do a few plays. We're going to walk in a heel. And just that makes them uncomfortable, right? It's not that we're doing anything bad to the dog.
Right.
They're just like
inconvenienced
and uncomfortable. They're like, holy shit, what is this whole dynamic? Like, because they've just never done that before, especially when they are older dogs, and they've just kind of been, especially small older dogs.
And I think it's good when dogs are like that to give them that work to do. It's almost like it's the same thing with kids. Like if you have, it could be teenagers that are, aren't behaving and acting up and causing all this ruckus, right? And then you put a lot of structure in and you give them chores to do and you give them things that they have to do when they don't want to. And you're just holding them accountable. You're not being mean, but you're holding them accountable and they learn there's consequences. You act right and things are good. You act bad and things aren't good. And they respect you more.
Right. 100%. Which actually reminds me of another point that we see folks have kind of a hard time with, and that is paying the dog, right? So we have no problem with doing that, but the idea is you want to get your dog to a point where you're not relying on that, right? Because that's a bribe. And people have a really hard time sometimes with like, well, do we give them a reward? It's like, well, once your dog knows it, they know it, right? You'll start expecting it at some point. It's like my daughter's 10 years old. When I tell her to go brush her teeth, I don't give her a quarter. Go do it.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, really, I mean, it's like if you do it every time, it's really a bribe more than it is a reward anyway. So that's bad. Especially since your bribe is going to lose out at some point.
Right. Well, we had that, I think, one of our Hanks, right? Where he had a lot of the treats in learning, which is fine, to a certain point. But he was so good and so fast, right? So he like sailed through the conditioning so quickly, so sweet. And then we started to get to the point we were doing non-compliance. And when you switch over to non-compliance, you don't feed every time, right?
Right.
And he would do like 2 or 3, and then he'd look at you like, well, what the flip?
What are you doing? That's woman? And that's normal.
He caught on to that right away, and he did fine, and now he's a superstar. But yeah, it's like, I want my food. Open treat. Not doing it.
Yeah. Well, with all that being said, I think your mic is dying, so we should.
We're done.
We should probably wrap it up. And Draco's going home soon, so we have some work to do.
All right.
But thanks for joining me today.
Session,
it was nice having you.
It's nice to be here.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey, guys. Thanks for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If there's a specific topic you'd like to hear discussed, you can send that to me directly via email or fan mail. Just jump down into the show notes. That information will be there for you. I really look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for supporting the show, and I look forward to next time.